Mishka Shabali is catching up with friends who are arguably more talented than him.
Heyo, it's Mishka. How are ya, gang? How you doing? I am so fried. I am so sleepy. Old grandpa dad stayed up late last night. I went to go and see Dracula's, Mike Wiebe's, one of Mike Wiebe's too many bands who were playing in Phoenix last night. Went to go and see them, and then I stayed up past midnight, and I've turned into a sleepy little pumpkin. So this intro will either be very long or very short, depending on where I peter out. Lots of good stuff in the pipeline. Andy Awancio will be performing live in my side yard in Phoenix, Arizona on Saturday, September 24th. Show starts at 8 p.m. It is there's no cover. We're just going to be passing the hat to pay the comics. I have half a jug of plastic vodka. I will be donating to the cause. I'll probably buy some really god-awful beer for your drinking pleasure. And if you're in town, drop me a message and please come and hang out. These shows are always special, weird, cool, intimate, unlike other comedy shows. My friend Rad Pinkert, who's been on the podcast, he'll be performing Critical Miss. Colin Galitko, who you know, of course, the hilarious producer of this podcast. Jacob Erdman will be on the bill, coming through from Colorado. Who else? Critical Miss. Did I say Critical Miss? Adam Baith. I think that's it. I think that's everybody. My guest on the podcast today, you may have noticed that I'm dipping hard and often into the comics who will be at Altercation. This is the weekend of October 22nd in Awesome, Texas, and some of my favorite comics in the country and some of my closest friends will be there performing, and I will be there too. So if you're in Texas, you should swing by. It's at Kick Butt Coffee. It's a comedy festival with a vibe like no other. So yeah, if you're around, please come out. One of the people who will be at Altercation is Jay Chanoine, who's our guest on the podcast today. I say the royal hour. Jay is I always hit this note maybe too hard or too often. He and I have almost nothing in common. I think we have very different musical tastes, different fashion sensibilities, different everything, different ska, different worldview. He lives in New Hampshire, and he's allowed to leave the state. And I have a special dark loathing in my heart for New Hampshire. One of the things that binds me together with Jay Chanoine is that he is just a fucking incredible comic. He's so good. And he does this thing that there's a lot of comics who are like, I hate the Republicans, I hate the Democrats, I hate the libs, I hate my wife, I hate my kids, and it's fucking exhausting. I remember when Louis C.K., when his sitcom was a thing and people were like, oh, you should watch this, and I watched it, and I was like, no, he just shits on everything, and I do that too much already, so it's emotionally exhausting for me to turn on a TV show and watch more of that. Jay also hates everything, but he hates it with joy in his heart. I don't know how else to put it. Jay very exuberantly hates many things about this country, this culture, this world, this experience. And I don't know. I fucking love it. It makes me laugh. He's an incredibly nimble, adept comedian. He moves through a lot of subjects very easily. So yeah, thanks for tuning in and enjoy this conversation with Jay Chanoine. Welcome to the show, Jay Chanoine. How are you, buddy?
Yeah, I'm all right. Thanks for Thanks for having me.
I like that you went into thanking me. And you're like, I'm going to wait and see how this turns out, and then
you're welcome. Is what I.
In the half hour leading up to this, I was like, I'm just going to scroll through Jay's feed and see if there's a couple of like things that, for us to chat about. And then as I was scrolling back, I was like, man, it's weird that Jay and I are friends. There are so many things that we just do not see eye to eye on. And then I was like, man, it's really bizarre that we're friends. And then I scrolled back deeper and I was like, are we friends? Man, what the fuck? Taking shots at Alice in Chains. You're an earnest proponent of ska. You've committed the irredeemable sin of any comic of being a better musician than I am, which that hurts like nothing else.
So first off, let me commend your way to kick this off, where I was like, I still don't know how I feel about agreeing to do this, by just being like, I'm not sure why we like each other. I was scrolling through your personality, and I am not satisfied.
And you're coming to us oily and live from New Hampshire. New Hampshire right up there with Arizona for my least favorite states in the union.
Yeah, you mentioned it a bunch when you did an awesome show in this state. You complained during that show that you probably had to come back because of how good that show went.
That was a great show. That was a fantastic show. I'm resentful of how good that show was. Yeah,
because maybe the state's not the problem, Mishka.
Oh my God. Jay, how are you? How have you been? I feel like the last time I saw you was Altercation last year or 2 years ago?
No, it's 2018 was the only time that I've done Altercation until this year.
Jesus Christ, what's wrong with JT only working you in like the Olympics?
I was supposed to be there in 2020, and then some shit happened. And actually, I was just telling Josh McClain of Heel's previous guest of yours, which I do want to tell you that I'm very happy to be guest like 36 on your show, because it's a very, very clear definition of where you rank me in your list of how talented and famous your friends are. But no, I was saying to Josh that you and I also had a short run planned for 2020 that obviously didn't happen for reasons. And we were going to go up into Canada and stuff. And I was telling Josh about the contract that you sent me, because we were going to be doing like a community theater in Boston, Massachusetts. And they sent you a 15-page like conduct agreement saying that we would not marginalize or microaggress anybody while we were on stage. And I was like, you didn't tell me where it was for. I was like, what venue is this for? If it's Boston, I am never going to stop laughing. And you were like, yeah, it's actually it. You were like, yeah, actually it is. It's Boston. And I was like, fuck it, Boston. Like, fuck you, fuck your mother. Boston, Massachusetts gave us 15 pages of don't be too grouchy towards people while you're on the stage.
Yeah, I feel private guilt. Well, I feel private guilt about everything, but I feel private guilt about the pandemic that I somehow caused it by actually booking a show in Boston, which the last time that I played Boston, like Boston proper, was legit 20 years ago. And it was one of the most profitable shows I've ever played because a drunk driver hit me going the wrong way on a one-way street. And, she just wrote me a check for $1,000 and then like took off into the night, and that's how I paid.
I was about to say that's the proper Boston experience, but getting money from the person who hit you is not part of it.
Yeah,
that's not supposed to be part of the Boston equation.
Yeah, that was I don't know, my sort of shakedown instincts just kicked into high gear immediately, where I was like, I can get a meal ticket out of this. But yeah, a very nice woman reached out to me about playing the show in Boston, and I always said I would never go back there. And this is the pain and suffering that I have wrought by going back on my word.
So I have you to thank for all the canceled shows.
Yeah, basically, I feel like I ruined everything. I have like 3 rejoinders to everything you've said. 36 is an auspicious number. It's sort of like being in my MySpace top 8. Because you're going to make it in the year in which I do this podcast, in which I like fold at the end where I'm like, man, fuck it. I'm sick of doing a thing every week that's not like taking a shower or something like that. To continually be making stuff, to be a successful artist, it's like some weird monkey's paw shit of just, you must constantly be promoting. And it's so fucking exhausting.
To do it without a day job, yeah. To make it be like your profession, you can be just constantly cranking stuff out without showing it to anybody, which when you talk about my music, that's exactly what I do. I'm not a musician because I make that shit and then I listen to it and go, ooh, that sounds cool. And then that is as far as that goes.
So you're saying I should get a job and make my life harder and worse to make it better? I mean, I guess if I worked at the DMV all day, I would fucking jump at the opportunity to go to an open mic or like drive 6 hours to go and do a show or something like that. I don't
know why you're immediately jumping to, well, if I'm going to get a job, it will have to be at the most miserable place on the face of the planet, obviously.
Jay, that's what I do. That's what I do.
I know, which is why when you were like, my life would have to be harder, I'm like, we've all heard you talk, man. I don't think you're capable of acknowledging that it gets worse ever.
I am like a very worst case scenario guy, like right out of the gate. Let's talk about your music. Because I really dig it, man. And this is sort of a closeted identity of yours, or soft closeted. I've known about I knew about your music beforehand, and I've actually listened to it before. But when you are doing the filthy thing that we all do of promoting ourselves, you're generally promoting your comedy.
Yeah, because that's the thing that I care about and that I want that I want to promote, and like that I tour with and everything. And the music, really, it's a hobby. And by the way, if we could backtrack just a little bit, when you said I am like a worst case scenario guy, that's why we're friends, Mishka. Right
I know. I was like, the
negativity is the bomb that
stumbled
holds
on
us
the common ground right there.
Well, and also in the email that you sent me about this podcast, like prep me to be ready to do it, you run down, like, I'm not going to like pry you for information, but here's some of my favorite topics to talk about. And I was like, I'm a fucking depressed recovered drug addict who I hit all the points that you wanted to talk about. I also was like, gee, this is going to be a hoot. I'm glad these are all the things you want to talk about.
It's a comedy podcast about, cutting and despair and just giving up, I imagine that you're probably a Cars fan.
Oh yeah, huge Cars fan.
Like maybe the Cars, Devo, Brian Eno.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever listen to music?
Not a whole lot. I do a lot of investigating into kind of like synth rock and synth music of yesteryear. So I definitely know them. I haven't done my deep dive there yet. The latest one is Fad Gadget I've been really into lately.
Okay. And when you're when you're assembling tracks, how do you put it together? Is it stuff you're all doing in the computer, or are you playing live too? Or
now it's mostly on the computer with like MIDI stuff and instruments and samples. I do have synth hardware and drum machines and stuff. I used to actually, up until 2020 is when I got a good computer that I could do this with and decided I was going to start learning digital music production. Before that, I had one of those huge HD 8-track recorders with a CD burner in the side of it that looks like a mixing board that goes on your desktop.
Like the VS 1680, something like that? What did you have?
It was a Zoom. It's in the other room. I could go get it, but it's a two-hand carry. It's a heavy board.
Yeah. I remember all that shit. I mean, I have like a 4-track on the wall behind me. I have an 8-track reel-to-reel.
Tascam 4-track is how I started with cassette. That was my first home recording.
I think that was
endeavor.
a gateway drug for so many of us. And I remember at the time it just being like the technology fucking stunned me. Like you can put 4 different channels on a cassette tape. Like this is this is wild. We're fucking living in the future, you know?
That was, well, and then mine, because 4 wasn't ever enough, would have like 19 of the cassette tape hiss stacked on top of each other because I would just keep reducing them down and adding more tracks beyond the 4 that it was trying to limit me to.
Yeah, yeah. My first 4-track recordings were with friends of mine at school, and we were probably like whatever 16, 17, 18, and their one of their favorite party stunts was like when we'd have a bunch of people over, they'd hook the 4-track up to the stereo and then just solo my vocals. And it was just like my own little teenage Abu Ghraib. It was the worst.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm so a big fan of dead technology. I love all that stuff.
Yeah, I tried to make a record that was just I was like cat sitting for Lanigan for a couple of weeks a couple of years ago, 2019. And I was like, okay, all right, I'm just going to make a fucking 4-track record because there's too many options with digital recording. And I was like, I'm just going to simplify it. And one of the things that I found when I sat down to record is that, man, it's not that simple to record to a 4-track. Like there's all sorts of, one of the things I found was that I had to have the microphone like 10 feet away from the machine itself because the noise of the wheels spinning on the fucking tape track was so loud that it would pick it up.
It would make its way into the microphone?
Yeah, yeah. And then most of what I'm doing now, you know, I think a lot of us sort of were like, okay, fuck it, now I'm going to learn to record on my... I've watched all the porn on the internet. Now it's time to learn how to like make music with my computer, I guess. I don't know. So I started recording stuff with GarageBand, and I'm shocked and appalled with how fucking easy it is to cobble, you know, to throw a beat up and to cobble a song together. And yeah, everybody's going to be doing it now.
I was saying recently that if I had like a time machine and I were to go back and talk to myself like 20 years ago and tell him what the future is like, he would be so disappointed to learn that we're like done with porn at this point. And what we watch on the internet now is like people stretching out a grilled cheese to show how much it sticks together.
Brennan from Heels and I are always like just trading shit that we find. It's weird to think that porn is boring now. 13-year-old me would be mighty disappointed in me.
It's background stuff, man. It's Friends reruns.
So you're going to do a DJ set at Altercation this year as well.
Yeah, so like quote unquote DJ set. This is kind of secret stuff too, but I don't think too many people listen to this, so I'm not that worried about talking about it.
Thanks. This is we're one of the corporate sponsors of Altercation.
That's great. This can be the place where I'll shout my credits in the woods. So yeah, it's the best way to describe it as DJ set. So here's the deal, is that I have not done a live music performance since I was in a band about 20 years ago. I played bass in a punk band, and the music I make has always been at home and like home recording and stuff. And then when I got the computer set up and the digital stuff, and it's a lot more electronic, like what I've been doing. And it's very, a subgenre of it that is called synthwave. That's very like music from video games in the 80s, kind of. Not all the way chiptune, but like kind of like that arcadey vibe. And that was what I was starting to do, and using Ableton Live, which is like EDM producer recording software. And there's a separate recording screen from other like DAWs and digital recorders that kind of sets it up where you have your samples and your loops, but it's not just a hit play full song that was recorded. It's all broken up. You can kind of key any of them up whenever you want and mix them all together into making a song. So I was like, that's what I could do when JT asked me if I would do a music set at Altercation. I said what I would be able to do is kind of like a DJ set of my own songs that I've recorded. I could perform them by launching clips, but I had like a couple months to do it. I was like, I'm not going to be ready to actually perform songs as a one-man band by fall. And he was like, cool, I want you to do that. Like, they have an awesome smoke machine and light show at the venue. And I was like, I mean, it sounds really fun, but this also sounds like a lot more work than I was prepared to do. at Altercation, and he recently was giving me the rundown of the shows. He was talking about the comedy set that I'll be doing, and he said no pressure, and I was like, I don't feel any. Thanks for telling me, but I'm good. And then he was like, and then this music show, and you'll open that, and I was like, there's the pressure. That's because I haven't done that in a really long time.
I'm delighted to hear that you're doing it because I'm always really self-conscious about bringing a guitar up on stage during what's purportedly a comedy show. But you're doing the cardinal sin of DJing your own music, so that makes me feel like sort of less of an outcast.
Oh, you want to talk cardinal music performance sins? I'm also doing the girl talk thing where it's like, why are we just watching a dude on his laptop right now? This isn't fun.
Will you be doing high kicks or anything like that?
Oh, I'm definitely. I actually said to JT the other day because he wants me to wear a mask, of course, and I was like, I'm looking at him, but I was like, I guarantee you it comes off after about 30 seconds because I'm going to be sweating a lot. Because when I dance, I'm sitting talking to you right now and I'm breaking a sweat. When I dance, it comes out. And he was like, do it for the art. It's 25 minutes. You can suffer. And I was like, okay, arms folded in the back of the room. When is the last time you moved your body to music? You don't know.
It's so funny that JT is out on the road with Eddie Pepitone right now because it's okay, so which one of you is the fragile old man shouting at clouds?
Why do you think they get along so well?
I hate it. I hate it too. Yeah, harmony and disharmony.
He's been geriatric since I met him in his 30s. And he's totally one of those people, I was saying this about parents, but it applies to him as well, that was always older than me. So I always heard him complain about how much getting older hurt. And then now I am the age that he was when he was complaining about that. And I'm not allowed to complain about it because he's older and it hurts more. So now I don't get he got to do complaining at 36 that I don't get to do because now he's pushing 50 and it hurts a lot.
Yeah, he is pushing 50. He is. I like to remind people that JT is actually older than I am. Our birthdays are 2 days apart and also 1 year. Something I will never let him forget. Take those petty victories where you can. I'm delighted to hear that you have a sordid past of playing bass in a punk band because I feel like you wouldn't be a bona fide comedian without some secret punk rock past. Please tell me more about this band. And how did you fall from the heights of being a musician to being a lowly comedian?
Actually, it started, if I can blow your mind, with stand-up comedy. When I was 12 years old, I did stand-up at church talent shows for a few years.
Do you please tell me you remember some of your bits?
I don't really. I know that I remember having one about school cafeteria food the first time I ever did stand-up, which is when I was 12. They were also at church talent shows, so my act was very different from what it is now. They were family friendly and everything.
I had Andy Owancio on the podcast, and she said there's a clip. Which I don't know why I haven't watched it yet. I guess it's on YouTube of her doing comedy in the third grade or something like that. That's going far enough back that it's no longer embarrassing. It's just fucking awesome. And
and it's a fun flex to be able to have on people that are like, I started when I was 20. You're like, I started when I was 12. It's no big deal. But no, then I discovered drugs and was like, fuck comedy. Fuck making people laugh. Let's get high and make noise. And I had a bunch of friends that were in, surprise, a ska band in Derry, New Hampshire that I hung out with. And when the ska band was breaking up, half of them formed a kind of horror punk, borderline hardcore band. It was called SH5. It stood for Slaughterhouse 5, but we never called ourselves that. And then their bassist was one of my best friends who had been in the ska band called the Takeouts. And when he stopped being their bassist, my other best friend was the guitarist, who was like, why don't you learn all the bass lines? And I did. So I joined the band, and it was just like 3 years, I think, that we were together when I was in the band before we broke up. But yeah, it was like a horror punk kind of AFI when they sounded like they wanted to be the new Misfits, kind of in that vein.
Okay. Do you miss it at all?
No. No, not even a little bit. I mean, sometimes, like, when you're at a show and you're having a great time in the crowd and you've ever had the experience of being on the other side of it, sure, there might be a moment of wistful memory of, boy, it sure was fun being on that side looking out at all the faces. But no, man, there's so much that goes into it that's not fun. There's so much being in a band for me. And to answer, how did you end up at comedy? Because I'm the asshole that wants everything to be under my control, and or at the very least the way that it's supposed to be and dependable. And with a band of dudes in their 20s that like chewing up fistfuls of pills on stage. That was me, by the way.
I was just gonna say that.
Usually in a dress. I was the bassist, so it was much more about that. It was much more about let's have fun and make a spectacle.
I was always the bass player too, because I wanted to be the guitar player, but it's sort of like where the kids are playing with Lego, and then there's the special needs kid, and they're like, "Here, we have Duplo for you." I was just so shit-faced all the time that it's like I got reverse promoted to bass guitar because it had fewer strings and it was harder for me to get my fingers underneath them.
Sure.
And bass players have a rich history of just being fucked up the entire time and not contributing anything to the show other than the threat of violence or something,
Yeah, you're the one who jumps around because you don't have that much to think about.
Yeah. With no power comes no responsibility.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
There was a while there in New York where I got into bands just because I had a van. Like the audition was like, so that's the van, huh? All right, cool, you're in.
Yeah. They knew what they needed. It was someone who can haul gear and stand there.
I do miss it sometimes, but then I just saw Idols recently. Is this band on your radar?
Yeah, and I actually saw you post about that.
One of my favorite things about that band is the bass player, and I feel like. It reminds me of a lot of bands that I, sort of cut my teeth on, like Fugazi and the Birthday Party and stuff like that, where the bass was a huge part of the band's sound. And seeing them live, it was like all about the bass. It was, so propulsive, and he had, shitloads of fucking fuzz on it. And I was so envious. It was over and we walked out. I was like, oh wait, now he's loading those like 2 SVT stacks or whatever the fuck it is. It's like,
first off, I'm not going to let you say it's all about that bass without pointing it out and making fun of you for it. But I also love the idea that after the show where you were like, the bassist is the best part of this band, you were imagining him loading, I hope, everyone's gear back into whatever.
Dude, when I worked at the Knitting Factory in New York, there were 3 stages. There was like the main floor, and then there was the basement, and then there was like the sub basement. And the sub basement was the smallest venue, so it would be all the like Long Island like fucking spin kick hardcore bands, and they would all show up with full Marshall stacks, the 8x10 SVTs, and the like drum cage to play a room that fit, fucking 30 people, and watching these like 15-year-old kids like fucking lugging this shit up and down the stairs. I was just cackling. I miss it. So I don't know whether to follow up about drugs or comedy. Let's talk about drugs first. What was your gateway drug? When were you like, oh fuck yeah, this is what I'm gonna do? Like, which drug was the one that popped for you?
The first, besides alcohol, the first drug, if we really go all the way back, and my mom hates when I say this, when I was very young, when I was like 4 or 5 years old, if I was too hyper at bedtime, she would give me a tablespoon of Dimetap to try and calm me down.
Fuck yeah.
And Dimetap is a delicious grape Kool-Aid in a spoon, and it is wonderful. And I learned that that was why she was giving it to me, was because I was rambunctious at bedtime. I like heard her say it to a friend. Parents, you always think your kids aren't listening when you say stuff like this. Oh, when he's not tired, I just give him time tap. I'm like, that's how I get it. So I just acted more hyper than I was actually feeling at bedtime because I wanted that sweet grape nectar. And I told her once, you taught me everything I know about drug addiction when I was like 25 because of Dimetapp. She was like, don't say that to me. But then I hate to be a person who's like, because I still love weed. Weed's the drug that I still do. And I hate to be like, there's validity to the gateway drug thing and it being a door into worse things. But I mean, it was absolutely within a year or two that I was drinking and smoking weed that I was like, well, let's try the rest of it.
I mean, I don't think that's on weed as much as it is on the drug education that we got, where we were like, where it's like, a man smoked weed once and he went, he had a seizure and then he was in a coma for 7 years, and then you smoke weed and you're like, well, I'm dumb now, but but it went away and now I'm hungry and you lied to me.
For sure. And there's also like a million different factors in the story that I am really telling you, where I was raised in a really strict born-again Christian household and was a very sheltered kid where a lot of stuff was just flat out off limits. And like the music and movies and books that I took in were like regulated by a lot of like people that were just members of the church would like have opinions on it and stuff. So there was a big rebellion thing going on in my teens and a inviting of the secular world into my life in a very grand fashion, where it was like, well, let's just let all of it, let's open the floodgates that have been held closed for my entire childhood. And drugs were kind of just in that wave, and boy, did I like them. And then whenever people are like, because I do, for a very long time, I did not say that I was an addict or that I ever had a problem, because there was never one specific thing that I was going to every day or like having withdrawals if I didn't get it. But there was like a 7-year period where I was never sober for an entire day by choice. So it was years after I had stopped doing everything besides smoking weed that I actually acknowledged, okay, that probably still falls within the realm of drug problem.
Yeah, it's, there's that like mental addiction and physical addiction, and my thing was always alcohol, because I don't know, it's weird for that to be, I just loved it. It just resonated with me more than anything else. And eventually, I went on to sort of like try everything and anything I could find. But it's interesting about your born again childhood. And what you're describing to me mimics the experience that I saw again and again with straight edge kids who were like, oh yeah, the never done it, never will. And then like Monday they have a cup of coffee.
Totally.
And then Tuesday night they have a Bud Light.
Yep.
And then Friday they're dropping acid, and Saturday they try heroin. Where it's they've just sort of flattened out the whole experience of intoxicants, so that they see it as a binary of either you're straight edge or you're not, and it's all the same. And then they will wind up fucking strung out or smoking crack or shit like that.
It's so similar to that, because it is, in the born again Christian church, you're taught that the evils of the world are like Satan trying to attack you and test your faith and everything. And you keep it out of your life. You don't invite it in, because it's welcoming your own struggles and questioning of your faith. And it's welcoming the devil attacking your faith and all of that. It's certainly not requiring yourself to think these things through and defend your beliefs so that you actually believe them. That's not what it is. It's just Satan attacking you. But it's very similar to what you're saying, that there's a binary setup where there's good and there's evil. Yeah. And once you, as a 15, 16-year-old kid, feel like you've cracked that forbidden door open, all the monsters are back there. And you're like, you shake one of their hands and he's kind of cool. So you're like, well, everybody come in. Let's do this.
Everybody get in the pool.
Yeah, exactly. Get in, loser. We're trying Coke. So...
Yeah.
It is very funny though that you say that alcohol was like your one vice that really, really resonated with you and that you always stuck to, because I think everyone does have one of those that it just feels like your style. I've actually been saying recently and working on a bit where I talk about how, because I don't drink anymore either, that wasn't hard for me to quit because that was never my vice. I was never an alcoholic. Right. I didn't even like being drunk that much because all the like main ingredients that go into the high experience of drunk are my least favorite ingredients in other highs that have other things going on. Like drunk is just the dizzy and headache and slurring and bumping into shit and having a dumb brain part. And if I'm going to be that kind of fucked up, I also want to be like tasting colors and talking to fire hydrants. Like why? The vertigo is not what's fun of being fucked up to me.
I've had like many epiphanies over the years that finally contributed to me, quitting drinking. But one I remember was like, just being hungover one day watching some outdated, I don't know if it was like a National Geographic thing or some Travel Channel thing, but it was a shot of a woman, on the plains in sub-Saharan Africa, moving very, very slowly. Moving so slowly, it was like she was underwater. And the guy was talking about sort of chronic malnutrition and the sort of like diseases and parasites that just an average African person in Africa suffers from. Sort of like constant diarrhea and dizziness and the lethargy. And I just looked at it and I was like, same. Like, and then I was like, maybe, nah, not yet. give me 10 more years, and then maybe I'll be ready to change. But
that was kind of the seed of doubt when it got planted for you that just started.
Well, that's the thing.
Coming back occasionally.
I have a lot of people who are in recovery on the podcast, and we try and talk about that moment where the moment where you identify that you're out of control, or the moment you identify that like I have to change, or that like I'm not driving this van anymore. And and in the after school specials, it's when an addict makes a decision to quit, it's always one moment, where they're like, oh my God, and it's the fucking lightning bolt from God. And then
absolutely. There's like a rock bottom and then you decide. And I actually used to have a bit where I would talk about how people always want to hear that story. Like what happened? What was the rock? When they find out that you're like in recovery or that you were an addict, they're like, what happened? And I would always be like, well, I don't really have one. Like I just slowly one by one stopped doing them, and then when there were only a few left, I stopped altogether. And then they're like disappointed, and you're like, I'm sorry that I never sucked anyone's dick for drugs. I don't know. I apologize. I sucked their dick because I'm a good friend. My rock bottom was like one of those Far Side calendars where it's like a comic a day. I just had like a new rock bottom every day for like 10 fucking years. And finally, I think when I quit, I finally, it's like we were talking about like porn becoming background noise, where I was just like I can't, I don't have the, people are like, oh, you're so strong that you quit drinking. No, I quit out of weakness. I didn't have the strength to pick up another fucking drink and to go through that whole like rigmarole, of, just the same bad night, like playing out over and over again. In your 7-year bender, did you feel like you were in pain or out of control, or was it just you were just moving from one moment to the next, or one day to the next? Or because I used to party and I had a great fucking time. And that's the thing about drinking and drugs. People are like, oh yeah, the alcoholism's the worst. I drank for 35 years and it was torture. It's like, bro, some of that was fucking good times. Right. So I was gonna say it's definitely both. Like there were definitely times where, and like a lot of times where it was just. I hated being sober. Sober was the like in the way other people have periods of intoxication in a normal healthy life. Sober was that, where it was sporadic and occasional and unwelcome when it was happening. But it was totally a lot of just partying, having a good time. And years later, when I wasn't doing this anymore, friends would tell me that, like, they saw me chew up a fistful of 12 pills and they asked me what they were, and I said I wasn't sure. And they thought, like, Jay's suicidal and no one's doing anything about it, and then would tell me later, like, we thought that you were, like, attempting to kill yourself when you would do things like that. I was like, well, first off, thanks for intervening. Secondly, I was just trying to have a good time. That's all I thought I was doing. Because you do build up a tolerance once you're chewing up fistfuls of things.
I remember, shaking out not a handful, a half handful of like Vicodin, and I dropped one and I bent over to pick it up, and I picked it up with like a pebble, and I held the pebble in my palm with one finger and then threw the Vicodin back, and then I looked down at my palm and there was a Vicodin there, and I swallowed the fucking rock.
Did you get fucked up? That's what I wanted.
I mean, the Vicodin worked. I don't know if the pebble facilitated it, if it amplified it anything, but it was just, that was a fucking Thursday night or whatever,
Right.
I could see you being a Coke guy or Adderall or Ritalin or shit like that, or were you a painkiller dude or?
I liked painkillers a lot. The opposite, though, Coke, I did not like. I was not a big fan. A lot of uppers I wasn't too big on, except for caffeine I swear by, but that's the acceptable drug.
That's the working man's upper.
Right. Coke, I still did mountains of it. Like, don't think me not liking something meant that I wasn't doing it if it was present. But that was, like, besides heroin, I never used needles. When my wife and I were dating, it was maybe a couple months into our relationship, she finally got up the courage to ask me, because she knew that there was a past but not specifics. And she said, so, like, what drugs have you done? And I said, I never smoked crack and I never used needles. She said, I asked you, and I said, I know what you asked me. And she was like, all right. She takes a minute. She's kind of like digesting it. And she goes, I guess if there's two that you're never going to do, crack and heroin are good ones to choose to never do. And then I went, yeah, I didn't say I never did heroin.
I heard that loophole immediately.
Yep. And she was like, oh my God. I was like, it wasn't last week. All right. I was like 17 years old. And that was actually the friend of mine that I was doing it with. We had done it 10, 12 times over the course of 2-3 months. And we were like blowing it. And then the people that we knew that we were getting it from were becoming and then extremely addicted to it, and like junkies. We were watching people become junkies, and it hit a point where my buddy that I was doing it with was like, I feel like we are at a point right now where we could stop if we wanted to, but if we don't, we turn into that. And he was like, and I want to stop, but I need you to stop with me, because if we don't, like, if you don't, if you want to keep doing it, I'm going to. I was like, cool, let's stop. And then we went and did other drugs. Like, it wasn't like we were making good decisions at that point, but it was like one small drop in the bucket. And then that kind of started, it wasn't for like many, many years that I would write another one off entirely. That kind of started that was the method that I was going to get sober. Was that one I would just feel like I was done with and make the decision that I wasn't going to do it again. And Coke was, I think, the next one. And it was like several years after that. But I think Coke was the next one that I was like, I don't ever need to do this drug again. I'm okay with it.
In my head, I'm imagining Kara's dating profile where she was like trying to if you can find me an acerbic high school dropout with a history of hardcore drug abuse. Did she lose a bet?
Do you think we met through online dating? Do you know how bad I look on paper? I am all in-person charisma. I rely on this entirely.
Is she just like, devoted to community service where she was like, I'll scoop this troubled youth off the streets?
Listen, you had your handicapped cat and she has hers. Okay.
That's another similarity that we're definitely both enthusiastic fans of dating up.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I love that.
Do you hear the lives that we are describing? If we dated our equals, we would be with garbage people.
It's funny too, because when you're when you're describing some of these scenes and some of these scenarios, you're talking about, your friends watching you take a handful of pills on stage. I've been sober for 13 years. Instantly, part of my brain was like, oh man, it's too bad I didn't know Jay back then. Like, we could have toured together, or like, he would have been the guy to get fucked up with me when everybody else in the other bands was like, man, what the fuck is wrong with that guy?
Totally. I was all about pushing personal limits and being your own guinea pig and seeing how far you can push it.
Dude, I had a drug buddy in New York, and I remember one night we had a bunch of pills, and we just chopped, like, we weren't doing the individual pills, we just chopped them all up together into like a multicolored line of sort of powder and gravel, and did like Lady and the Tramp, like meeting in the middle, like fucking with dollar bills, like meeting in the middle of it.
Totally. You did like why did they separate the 3 flavors of Fun Dip? Let's put them all together.
Yeah. And I don't deserve to be alive. Not for the danger of that, but just the fucking stupidity, absolutely should have had a heart attack.
I feel that in a big way. Every time that I get like a cold or a flu and need to take regular cough and cold medicine now, my body decides that I should wake up at like 2:00 in the morning and feel like I'm tripping, because that is what I used to use those medicines for.
I drank so much Robitussin cough syrup when I was a teenager that I was like driving with my sister and her kids, and one of them put a cherry cough drop in their mouth, and I was like, fucking roll all the windows down, and I pulled over,
like you were gonna
and made
puke.
them, and made them spit it out, because I was like, I'm fucking starting to shake and sweat, like, I spit it out. I can't deal with that smell.
Here's the generation gap, and it's beautiful. That it's not that I never chugged a bottle of Robitussin, but my go-to was the 3 C's Coricidin cough and cold for high blood pressure people, because that was my generation's magic little pill, and it had a sugar coating on it. You would take 8 of them, which is like the equivalent of a bottle of Robitussin or whatever. I think there might have been 16 in a pack. You took a whole pack if you really wanted to get high. There were several times where I took 32, 2 full packs. My liver, I don't know why it's still working. I have no clue. But they had a sugar coating on them, like Advil. And now to this day, if I let it sit on the tongue for a little too long and I taste that flavor, I will dry heave.
Yeah. Yeah. We, when I was 16, a friend's band put out a 7-inch called the 4 Fluid Ounce Euphoria, which was describing it wasn't even Robitussin anymore. We were doing Tussin, the generic.
Sure, yeah, great value brand. It's still in there. Still exactly, got DXM.
It wasn't Cumberland Farms that we stole it from, but it was some pharmacy or whatever that eventually we had to put it behind the counter. But we would do 4 fluid ounces of extra strength, and then we switched to doing the capsules, which also had ephedrine in it, so your heart would just be like and I took so much of that once that I was like, we were driving around on my friend's Volkswagen Rabbit or something, and I looked over and I saw a guy in a hooded sweatshirt hanging from like not hanging vertically, hanging like off the side of a lamp, and then he pulled his hood back and it was me. And I was like, "Oh fuck!" That's what I guess I took too much. But when you were a kid, did your parents ever give you Dramamine?
Yeah, for sure. Because I actually have a very sensitive stomach, and a little bit still as an adult. Not like I did when I was a kid, but I was very prone to like motion sickness. So yes, they did. And then when I was in the time period that we were just talking about, of course I know where you're going with this, I did try eating way too much of it to trip out, and I always fell asleep.
Yeah. I never took it as an adult, but taking that as a kid is like, sorry, Mom, one of my legit happiest childhood memories, just being like in the back seat with my dad driving, like safe, and tripping my fucking balls off with my family when I was like 6.
When I was a teenager, and this is, if it wasn't like in the middle of, because me getting prescriptions was definitely a part of let's gobble up big fistfuls of pills. If I started getting it before there was like a drug problem active, It was definitely still happening when that was. My doctor prescribed me Ambien because I had trouble sleeping, and I was a teenager. I was like 16. They gave me Ambien.
Oh God.
And I ate it and loved it, and like would not sleep, but would feel great while I was still not sleeping. So I would go into the doctor, and he would be like, "How's the Ambien working?" And I would be like, "Great, more, please."
You're like, the Ambien's great, but I need something so I can sleep.
Right, exactly. But so very similar, where it was like, yeah, everything's fine. This is wonderful, and you're just kind of secretly riding out, like you're taking what you're supposed to. But
so what finally led you to comedy? Like, did you just run out of drugs? You were like, is comedy your rock bottom?
No, comedy was such an early love, man. The first time I saw, and I want to say it might have been Jerry Seinfeld. If it wasn't, it was Bill Cosby, which I always point out is ironic now. But when I was a kid and in like the Christian household, and I'm talking like 5-6 years old, the first time that I saw like comedy on TV and realized that was a job that you could have, telling jokes and making people laugh. It all had to be clean. So like Seinfeld and Cosby were like the people I was allowed to watch when I was a kid. And I loved it, man. I fell in love with it. When I was in second grade, when I started doing open mics and stuff, I had a buddy who was one of my oldest friends, was in second grade with me. He came out to an open mic. He was like, "This is really cool," because I remember in second grade, our teacher asked what you want to be when you grow up, and you said a stand-up comedian. I was like, I fucking meant it, dude. And there was definitely a time period in between there when I'm talking about being in a band where it wasn't like important to me anymore, not something that I really wanted to do, because I was partying. I was having a good time. I wanted to be cool, not funny. And all that stuff. And then after the band dissolved and I was kind of doing like home recording of my own music and everything, I started writing comedy. It was really my big three, and you cool comics can talk shit to me about Seinfeld all you want. The man is fucking talented and understands the craft and writing in a way that we can all benefit from watching a little bit of. That dude's still one of them. Carlin, when I heard him, was like the glass shattered, and I didn't know you could do it this way. Then it was several years later I discovered Patton Oswalt, and he was, because I was an adult at this point, he was the one that made me go from, man, I would really like to do that one day, to like, let's get writing, because you can apparently do it this way. So I wrote for a good few years before I actually got on stage, because it was I just need to do it type of thing, and I kept not doing it. And so the first time I did an open mic, I had about 15 minutes written, and I did the best 5, and it went pretty all right. It went pretty well. So of course here I am 13 years later, because that's all it takes. It's the first time to be all right, and you're like, yep, this is my life now. That felt great.
I mean, honestly, Jay, you're a very good comedian. You're very funny.
Thanks, buddy.
You're like a shortstop of a comic in that you can do all the things. And it's so gratifying to hear you say, I wrote forever before I got up there and tried it, because there are so many people who are just like,
the only way you're going to say something good.
People who are like, yeah, I'm drunk, fuck it, I'll give it a shot, and get up there, and then they suck, and then I think they're like determined to, I'll show them, and then they just sort of keep going, like out of a sense of revenge of like the horse bucked me the first time, so I'm just going to keep getting back up there until without realizing how much work goes into the back end of it, of writing and crafting the jokes, and
there is absolutely some degree of what you're talking about, though, and I think a lot of people rely on that there are things you can learn. There is stage presence, there is timing, there is just watching people's reactions to different things. There are cheap laughs that you can get. There's lots of stuff that can be learned behavior that if you are the bad guy at an open mic and you pay enough attention, you'll get paid work, man. There's enough that is kind of a science to it, where if you're good at that, you'll be able to trick a lot of people into thinking that you're good at it. But ultimately, yeah, I preach nonstop that like writing and rewriting and then murdering your beloved thing that you wrote by scrapping 75% of it is the only way to really get something worth, not worth listening to, but that sounds way too high and mighty, but like that's the process for me anyway, is to get that good little nugget is you're starting with writing something way too long and then you're cutting it down a million times.
But the frustrating thing, I think, is that the writing is just half of it. And then the other half is so hard. Like, it's easy to say you need to watch comics, you need to fucking diagram jokes, you need to sort of break it down, you need to write and rewrite and edit and all that stuff. That's like very teachable stuff. But like Glenn Wool will raise one fucking eyebrow and sell a joke just from that.
Sure.
You know? And there's, Jake Flores will say mispronounce one word in a
absolutely
theatrical way. He used to do a joke about getting his news from BuzzFeed.com. And he would just mispronounce it. And
right.
I was on the road with him. I saw the joke every single night, and every night it popped me. And it drove me nuts because intellectually I'm trying to parse, like, what's fucking happening there? Like, why is that funny? And why does it, it's like I know that it's like a jump scare that you know that it's coming, and then if you jump anyway. And it was, it's maddening to me to not be able to break it down. But there is something that's sublingual or supralingual, or there's an animal or magic, it's like the flip books, comic books where you would flip it and you would see the guy, start to run or whatever. Those are just static drawings, but if you flip it at the right tempo, at a certain point, magic happens and that character starts to move. And that's the shit that I'm super interested in trying to freeze it and to be able to identify it and pick it apart. And it's so hard to pin it down why some people can just kill with a joke, and somebody else could tell the same joke and it just dies on their lips.
Yes, but let me express gratitude that you feel like you're not able to pick this apart and break it down, because what you're talking about is taking something fun and enjoyable and making it not so.
I mean, that's what I do for a career.
You're like, I was laughing and smiling, and I was like, can't have that. Let's think about why this is happening.
Well, I have lots of bullshit theories, but one of the bullshit theories that I have is that one of the reasons that comedians are such fucking sociopaths is because what we're actually trying to do is break down sort of ordinary organic human behavior of somebody, somebody tells a joke or cracks a line, the other people laugh, somebody else makes a comment, tags it, whatever, is to break it down to all its fundamental parts, in the same way that a sociopath who is unable to express genuine emotion will observe people around them and be like, oh, she tilts her head like this when she does that. That means this. So it's like we're studying it. And so in the same way, it's like sociopaths study human expression in order to pass at being human. And if comics do it for too much, we turn into sociopaths.
For sure. Turn into, first off.
Well, yeah.
Maybe
that's
let me drop a little science on anyone who's ever set foot on a comedy stage. There's something wrong with you. But yeah, what you were talking about like watching comedy and studying it and diagramming layouts and structures of jokes. I did shit like that for all through junior high and high school. Comedy Central was I studied comedy as an art form and would draw those similarities of, oh, that is the same structure that this person uses for this joke, but they moved these ingredients, they did this, interesting. And then kind of it was very much that breaking it down and seeing, like you're talking about, making it not fun, seeing the science behind the thing, that seeing a crowd laugh and then me cynically sitting there going, why are people happy about this? Let's figure that out. But then there's a whole nother side to it. That's the sociopathy that you're talking about. That is, you need to then observe the way real human beings are responding when the words are coming out of your mouth, where it's a conversational thing, where now you are categorizing types of people that you know and the things that they find funny and how you get the really big belly laugh out of certain personalities and things like that. It is entirely sociopathic behavior and categorizing human beings.
I was talking to my writing students once, and we were talking, and I was saying, what we're trying to do with writing is to put, the right words together in the right order in order to force someone to feel an emotion, and when you can get your reader to cry, that's one of the strongest emotions possible. And that's, and that's one of the things that's like really rewarding, and it's complex, and it's also like very simple. And you want people to cry, kill the dog. And everybody looked at me just fucking horrified. And I was like, I have said too much. I gave away too much. I went too deep. Don't kill the dog. Don't kill the dog. But I remember being on tour when I was just starting out, actually, when I started out, I was just playing songs and then telling depressing stories from my life between them. And I still do a lot of that. But now I actually tell jokes. It's not just all nonfiction now. There's fiction in there as well, or elements of fiction. And when I was just learning to do that, or just starting to do that, I was on the road with JT and Ron Babcock. And I was taking a nap in the back while I think Ron drove. And I woke up and they were talking about tags and callbacks and sort of the different words we use to identify parts of a joke and how a joke is structured and stuff like that. And I remember waking up to it and thinking it was so fascinating. And then now I wish I'd slept through that and never.
What a pretentious conversation to wake up to. Yeah.
But I love that shit. I love, when I was on the road with Jake, we would just take, we would spend a fucking 2 hours without a break in the van diagramming one joke or one bit and sort of workshopping it and cutting it up and stuff to see how it could work better. And Jake being Jake, motherfucker would never settle on one static. This is the ultimate. This is the greatest hits. This is the best version of this joke. He had to fucking change it every night and tweak it every night. And I kept being like, no, Jake, just get it. But that's what he's into.
Because what if the thing you thought of is better? What if it could be better? Yeah. You're never done writing a joke. That's the thing. That's the big difference between being someone who writes a bit and being someone who writes a book. Is a book, once it's on the page, it's done. The bit is never done.
Yeah. And I was trying to do taxidermy, and he was trying to train the dog, trying to get the dog to do tricks or whatever. That he would be adapting not changing his fucking politics if we played at a cowboy bar or a gay bar, but adapting selecting the order, curating the set.
Absolutely. There's certain words that you can avoid saying that will elicit a reaction, and totally. Yeah. There's you don't change who you are or what you're saying, but you can change how you're saying it to better suit the crowd.
Yeah. One of the things that I really admire about your stuff is that I feel like me, you hate a lot of shit, but unlike me, you do it with great enthusiasm.
Yes, I am.
Your hatred of the world seems to bring you real joy.
I am so joyfully hateful. Yeah, that is a wonderful way to describe it. Yeah. It's fun. It's fun to shit on stuff, man. It's especially if you're good at it. That's totally just the 90s pop culture dork mentality never growing out of me, where it's I like to make fun of stuff. And I'll take it a step further. The things that you hate, what makes it fun, get to know them. If you hate a band, listen to their album and earn that fucking hatred. People all the time, I'll be talking shit about 311, and people will be like, it sounds like you know a lot about 311. And I'm like, they used to be one of my favorite bands. I'm very good at making fun of these people because of the familiarity.
when we were talking before the show, and you said that the new mix that I have dips into Sublime for a second, I was like, I'm going to cancel the podcast. It's like this. Stop this.
There
train,
was a moment before there were elements of the song that you had me listen to that needed to kick in for me to feel like I had the whole sonic experience, and they hadn't yet. And I had a little rip dip diddle acoustic guitar, and I had hip hop drums, and I was like, we're getting a little Uncle Cracker. We're getting just a little bit 90s acoustic radio, where it was everything had that hip hop beat behind it. But then I told you I loved the song that you had me listen to because the other elements elevated it past it. It very quickly fixed itself.
Josh McLean said something about he was like, oh, I like this mix because you ditched the Everlast thing, and I was like, I like Everlast, and he was like, and the G Love and the Special Sauce, and I was like, I hate that band. So
those to me are in the exact same vein of what I'm talking about. The whole Sublime Uncle Cracker, they're part of that Venn diagram.
It's so weird that 90s rock. I mean, I guess it's not weird that it's old. You live long enough, you get old. That's how the shit works, but that it's that people are sort of selectively fetishizing the 90s now without addressing like Candlebox, or just some of these, sort of
Seven
horrific,
Mary 3.
Yes. Some of these horrific, I tried to date a girl for a minute who was like really into Third Eye Blind, and I don't want to be a judgmental prick about music because there's so much music that I like that I have a hard time defending. And I think too that music at its core is good. That and the point of music is to enjoy it. It's not to fucking be a snob about it or like chop it up. It's just to give yourself over to it. And if you're in the mall and some fucking pop music is playing on the radio, over the speakers, you can choose to enjoy it and have a pleasant experience, or fucking be a dick about it, and then you're me. But Third Eye Blind was just it was a stumbling block. It was real.
I've let this entire episode go on without ever doubling back to call you a douchebag for being like, oh, Jay doesn't like Alice in Chains. But let me instead take the opportunity to tell you that first Third Eye Blind album's pretty good, man. It's not bad. Oh, fuck,
dude. I was like, oh, man, Jay buried the lead. Like, we're going to, in the final act of the podcast, we're going to have like a long, mature discussion about the real merits of Alice in Chains.
Going to have an argument in
zigged
chains.
When I thought you were going to zag. And such a colossal disappointment.
That was my goal, honestly. That was what I was going for here. Now you know how the rest of us feel. No, I like that. That big Third Eye Blind album, I think is good, and it has some fun songs on it. But I'm very much a 90s alt rock apologist, where I wouldn't say I'm part of the fetishizing 90s alt rock. It's just that I loved it when it was happening, and there's so much of it that now there is a little bit of a nostalgic lean where I didn't need to love the song that much. I'll throw it on now. Like, the CDs are $2 at Goodwill. I didn't like Dishwalla, but it's worth 200 cents to listen to it one more time while I'm smoking a joint or whatever.
Yeah. The I feel like I was super serious in the late 90s, and I think I was just really, really hardcore obsessed with like Nick Cave and Old Dylan and stuff like that. And I was listening to like Jonathan Fire Eater when a lot of people were listening to Eve 6 or, whatever
I was listening to Eve 6. One of our first tours, I brought that Lit album that was very famous, and
dude, I
played
still have
it for
a stack.
JT and locked the doors in my car. We were at a diner and I wouldn't let him out. I was making him listen to it.
I actually remember the highlights from JT touring with you and being like, oh my God, Jay's great dude, great comic, and the fucking music, Jesus Christ. It's just dude, I have a stack like this tall of Lit stickers that I've been holding on to since like 1997 because my roommate at the time worked some PR job or whatever. They're in my filing cabinet. I'll send them to you with a bunch of Archers of Loaf stickers.
Thank you.
I met Max Collins, the dude from Eve 6, the singer, and he is like the nicest, funniest guy.
Yeah, that's all I hear. Not what I hear about AJ Popoff, lead singer of Lit. I hear that guy's a douche. And also, let me go ahead and tell you that they have a new album out. They went pop country for a couple of years to try to get some Republican money. And then they were like, all the 90s kids are in their 30s now. We can capture him again. We can get him to come out to shows. And they tried. They're like trying to push this new album. Like, Lit's back. Lit sounds the way you want them to. Wow, is this album bad? It is not good.
Sometimes I feel weird about kind of giving up on music and allowing myself to just sort of taper off into obscurity. Not that I wasn't already tapering off into obscurity from the beginning. But then I see artists who are sort of like still playing state fairs in their 50s, and I'm like,
yeah,
man, just get a job at a fucking DMV or something.
It's the old Stanhope bit about people saying when someone like kills themselves young. Like, Kurt Cobain had so much more art to give us. It's like, maybe he didn't. Like, maybe if Hendrix hadn't died, he would be playing state fairs right now and shit like that. And it's true. You
give it up to Stanhope for fucking finding a bleak situation and finding a way to make it even bleaker. You know, what you think is the worst possible universe could actually be way worse. A guy, yeah, he has a gift. What do you have coming up this year? Are you touring? I saw you just had COVID around the same time that I did.
I had a month of fun shows lined up. I had Off With Their Heads and Ben Roy coming through. And then the day after that, I was headlining a Don't Tell show here in New Hampshire. And then I had weekend of shows in Maine and back down here. And every show in August that I had booked, one got canceled pre-COVID. The rest of them were all like either I was sick or I was still testing positive or things like that. September, I have some cool stuff on the pike. We have the New Hampshire Granite State Comic Con. I'm going to be running some like Q&A panels that I'm actually pretty psyched about. That's going to be a fun little detour from just doing stand-up. And also, like, I get to talk to like Doug Jones and stuff. So that's going to be real fun. Later that week is my birthday at my hometown spot. The Shaskeen has always been kind of my comedic home base. And Wednesday, 9/21, I turned 37 years old, and Wednesday happens to be when my favorite show in the state happens. So I'm going to headline that, have a little birthday party show, and then October is Altercation. Wow.
Yeah, I have a bunch of stuff happening again, which is so weird. It's the because I do remember it. I remember some of my bits. I remember some of my songs. I'm trying to sort of like get it back together. I'm doing a couple shows with David Dondero, and he's just like a straight, sort of traveling songwriter, troubadour. So it's not as much. I'm not going to hit as much of the funny shit, and it gives me an opportunity to play the more sort of serious, depressing stuff, which I love. And then, yeah, I have to write a bunch of shit to do at Altercation, and it's just going to be old man COVID lockdown jokes about my cat and my dog and it's like I went from having this life that was just in fast forward all the time, living on the road, where your brain doesn't have an opportunity to parse all the bad, weird, shitty, funny stories that happen before something else happens.
Right.
And then now I'm like, yeah, maybe I will watch Criminal Minds again from the start,
Oh, man, it's worth it for the Mandy Patinkin seasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guys, wonderful. Also, I want to promise everybody that despite Mishka being like, I'm working on this material, it's all going to be like COVID and cats, there will be good acts at Altercation too. You should still come, please.
It is it is a pretty fucking great lineup this year, and I'm actually tapping a bunch of people from that's the only reason I got around to you finally, is that I was like, oh wait, Jay's on I remember Jay. One of the problems is and listen, this is a good problem, and I'll be honest about this, is a good problem, is that when I'm choosing guests, I look at all the people who I think of in the first wave, and then I'm like, oh, these are all fucking straight white dudes who are wearing a black hoodie long after it's appropriate, and I need to fucking shake it up a little bit, and it's pushed me to go outside my sort of bitter punk rock dude circle of guys I know, and reach out to get just a little sprinkling of the old diversity.
So you're telling me there's listenable episodes of this podcast?
I had Josh McClain on.
I listened to that one. Yeah.
Are you recording anything new, or do you want to?
So eventually, yeah. What happened is I was almost ready to record when COVID hit. I almost had like the new hour ready to go, and then not performing for over a year, and then going back to it was not only were the cobwebs back on all of the material, but a lot of it I was like not psyched about doing anymore, and working on new stuff that I wanted to replace it with and that I was excited about. So, I mean, understandably, there's like a 5-year gap in between my first DIY album and my second one, the Texas Chanoine Saw Massacre, which is on Stand Up Records. Next one will be on Stand Up as well, but my goal was for there to be a less than 5-year gap in between album 2 and album 3. I wanted to kind of streamline the process. And then a virus took 2 years away. So it was like very easy to make it be the same kind of time frame, and it's probably what we're looking at again. I was hoping I would be ready to record this year. It's probably going to be next year.
Yeah, I was supposed to go and record something for Audible in New York, and that went away forever. But also, I mean, it some of the shit it's like if you recorded something in the fall of 2019 and then you were going to try and put it out in 2020, you're a jackass because everything changed and none of that shit will hit the way that it did then.
Right.
Let's get out of here. Can we play a song of yours at the end of the show here?
Sure.
All right. So you'll send me a song.
I'll send you something
that we'll tack on at the end here. And where can people find you?
So I had a website years ago, and it has not been like correct or working for a very long time. And it's like, this website doesn't exist. It's not online. And people are always like, oh, your website's down. I'm like, who fucking goes to a website anymore? I'm on Instagram. It's at Jay Chanoine. I'm on Twitter. It's at Jay Chanoine. I'm on Facebook. It's Jay Chanoine. People are always like, oh, and that's real easy to spell and for people to remember. If you want to be a fan of mine, put in one fucking iota of effort. Learn how to spell my goddamn name. Chanoine. It's really not that hard. People have names that are far more complicated than this that are doing just fine. JT Hubersuit has told me plenty of times, you have a difficult to remember last name. Like, all right, Dutch boy. But
everybody slips the extra T in there.
It's all how many umlauts are in your last name, sir?
He gets the extra T.
It's all
the extra
social
C.
media places.
Yeah. Jay, thanks so much for doing this, man.
For sure, dude. Thanks for having me. Turns out this was an enjoyable experience.
I wish I'd heard that more often. I'll see you at Altercation, my friend.
Absolutely.
Folks, thank you so much for listening. I know there's a million podcasts out there. We appreciate you spending your time with us. If you're digging the show, if you're enjoying it, if these conversations move you, make you laugh, annoy you, piss you off, please take a minute to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast. It helps us grow the show, and it helps other people find it. If you'd like to hear bonus episodes, song demos, just sort of ranting off the cuff conversations, all sorts of different bonus material, writing advice, personal blog posts and stuff like that, go to patreon.com/Mishka Shabali. We will be having monthly episodes up there with my mom and I answering questions from readers, and there's all kinds of good stuff there. Thank you so much for supporting.